Welcome once again, guys. And in this video, we're going to be looking at the login functionality. And this is going to come with facial recognition. The last video we looked at facial detection for the registration. And basically how this is going to work is that the user enters his email and then enters his password. And then when he submits, we check to see whether his credentials are correct. If they are correct, we send the image that contains his face from the server down to our Ionic application. And then we use Face API digest to check whether the image from the server with its facial appearance matches the image which will prompt the user to take from his camera immediately after he enters his email and password. That's after we have sent the data from the server. We'll now prompt him with his camera, takes a picture of his camera. We check to see whether the image on the camera matches the image that came from the server. And if it matches, then we move the user to our profile page. Okay. With all that being said, as you can see, I've just Ionic served to serve my application on my browser. And so the first thing I want us to do now is to go to the homepage.html. And basically, we're going to be needing two image tags. All right. So just like we did in the register, I don't know if we did that in the register page.html. I'm not sure. But let's just check if we did. Yep. You can see the same way we had one image tag here, register page.html. Here we're going to have two image tags. Okay. And the two image tags are going to store the two different images, the one from the server and the one from our application. So now let's get straight into it. We're going to create, first of all, we're going to create a div tag. And this is why I love Ionic so much. All right. So we actually want this image to be present on our application. And since Ionic is more like a browser, we can simply, add a CSS property so that the user does not see this div that contains the both image tag, even though they exist on the user's application. So we're going to set this to display as none, and then we're going to get the image tags. So image, all right, let me just type that. And our source for now is going to be blank. We'll have two image tags. Why am I all right? Yes, all right, thank you. So I'll just get rid of this. All right, and copy this. So basically, there are going to be two images. One image is going to come from the server, and another image is going to come from our application. So we're going to give these two IDs. So we're going to call this image from server, and we're going to give this an ID too. And we're going to call this image from app. Okay, and we want to give this an element reference so that we can easily target this element in Angular. So we're going to call this login images. That should be our element reference on this div. And having created our div, the next thing we want to do is to create two variables, or basically an object. And we're going to call this object login image data. And the first is going to be image from server, and we just want to set that to null for now. And image from app, and we're going to set that to null. Or image from camera. From camera, we're also going to set that to null too. And let's copy this because we actually want to add this as the source property here. Basically, we want to do one with data binding, so we're going to say image dot image from server. So let's copy this right now, image from server, and here we are also going to do the same thing too. Also going to do the same thing too. So let's just copy everything from here. Oh, I didn't know that my battery is running down, so let me just connect my charger. Okay, let me get my charger connected. All right, so now my charger is connected to my PC, and now we can actually continue. So right here, we're going to have login image data dot we're going to call this image from camera. Okay, so image from camera. So basically, we've passed the two parameters, or the two source data that we need to pass here. So what we're going to do next is straight up to our login functionality. And the first thing we want to do first is, once the user clicks the login button, we would like to show the user a loading controller. and that loading controller is going to load until the data or whatever response we're expecting from the server pops up. So we are going to import from ionic Angular. All right, and we're going to import loading controller, and we're also going to inject that loading controller into our constructor. I don't like to use the public because sometimes when you build the application, maybe Angular application for production, kind of starts public, private, accessing it over here, and it's public and all that. All right, so now let's call this let me use my plugin. So loading controller, yes. All right, so now we have loading controller. So what we can do is declare a variable here and call this loading, and this would be equal to, of course we have to add an async here. So this is going to be a promise of our loading controller, and we want to create our loading controller basically, and it takes two parameters. The first is the message, so we're going to tell the user please wait, and the next is a spinner, and we're using the default Android spinner for this application, which is Crescent, and that should be that for here. And now let's present our loader. So we're going to say loading dot present, and this is actually a promise, so we're going to say that then, and for the then we want to have a fat arrow function, and right inside of here is where we're going to perform our login functionality. Okay, so we're going to head straight into our API, and we're just going to move back to login functionality, and it actually requires two values, the email and then the password. So we are going to come back here, and we created in our authentication service, we created login here, so we are going to import authentication service here too. So we're going to import from source app services and authentication service, and I also want to import alert service, alert service which we created just to make presenting alerts a bit easy for us. All right, so we're going to import from source app services alert service. All right, and here we are going to call our authentication service, pass our authentication service, and we're going to pass our alert service, and we need to inject that here too. So public auth service, and this is going to be type of authentication service, and next up public alert is going to be of type of our alert service. Okay, so with that being done, we can now say this dot auth service, all right, dot login, and let me just go back to our login to our authentication service, and you can see that our login function is actually a promise. So we are going to say auth service dot login, and then, but we need to pass a parameter here basically, because if we get back to our login functionality, authentication service, you can see we are passing login data, and our login data is coming from this form here, basically the email and then the password. Okay, so and our form here is an object. Let me just add the public here. Doesn't really change much anyway, because they're basically the same thing, but let's just add it. So now here we're going to say this is the form. Okay, and then so this returns a promise, and what we can do now is we're going to say data, and we are going to log whatever it returns to us. So console.log, and we're going to pass the data, and of course if there is any error, we are also going to log that to the console. Okay, so now we save that and our application compiles successfully, and then we come over to our browser, and why am I refreshing this? This has probably refreshed, and let's just go over to our database and pick up one user. What is going to be, all right, so my username and then my password. Okay, And here we are. Our database is called FaceAuth, and we have users. And let's go with bascadino@gmail.com. And all my users are usually password whenever I'm building applications that are not yet on a production server. So password. And now when I click on login, all right, you can see okay, because we didn't remove this loader, but you can see basically it returns for us a couple of things. First of all, it returns the image, the base64 image. It returns the token. And about this base64 image, I just wanted to say something. While we were building the API, we didn't return that's after the user logs in, we actually return the image as basically as a string with the HTTP blah 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 and all that. Okay. But what I actually found out is that the laravel public folder, and I don't know whether it's the laravel public folder or maybe it's from my local machine, but whenever I kind of try to use that URL to perform facial recognition using FaceAPI.js, it always throws some kind of cause error. And I asked a couple of questions. I went to GitHub and asked a question from the creator of FaceAPI.js and didn't get any positive response. And so that's on a local machine. If this was actually to be on a production server, it will work fine. All right. And what we just simply need to do is we get the image of the user, we convert it to base64. You can see here, we are getting the image, we are converting it to base64, and then we are passing the image, and we are adding this to make it a URL sort of, and then the encoded base64 file. So that way, whatever we are passing is just a base64 string that has nothing to do with our API whatsoever, or that does not have the attachment of the HTTP, localhost, port, blah blah blah. And so that way, our Ionic application cannot throw calls for us on our local machine. Okay, so that is just the little modification I made on the API. So I'd like you to also do that same modification too, so that you can flow and follow up with this tutorial. Okay, so having said that, now let's just get back here. And on our console, you can see it returns success of true. It returns our base64 encoded string, which is the image. And also it returns our token for us, which we're also going to store in our local storage. And we're going to use to perform, or we're going to use for auth guard basically. All right, to protect routes. Okay, so with that in place, what we can do now is we are sure that this is coming through. We are also sure that the token is coming through. So what we can do now is just get over here, and we're going to dismiss this loader if there's any error. Loading the dismiss, and we are going to say, what are we going to say? We're going to say, okay, so loading the dismiss, nothing. And we want to use this, the alert, the present alert, all right? And error, and the message we are going to use is going to come from, let's go into our exception handler, and you can see here the message. So we're going to say error, or no, let's create two variables again, and we're going to say error response. Error response is of type any, and let's just make this public too. And public success response is also of type any. All right, error response of type any, success response is of type any. And so we're going to say this, that let's assign this first. I'm going to say this dot error response equals error. And now we are going to come right here and say this dot error response dot message. I think it's message, right? Yes, it's message. All right, let's see. This is the error response dot message. Yes. All right, so this is the error response dot message. Okay, so it's going to tell the user maybe unauthenticated and stuff like that. So with that in place, what we can do here also is to say that if but first let's just say this dot success response equals data, and we're going to say if this dot success response dot success, all right, if the success is equal to true, and not just that the success is equal to true, so let's just check, move over to our API, and in our auth controller, in our login, we can see here that success could be false with invalid email or password. Let me change that, or password. All right, so but let's scroll down a bit, and when success is true, so basically if success is true, that means that the user is logged in. I think that's all. Success is false. Okay, so if this dot success underscore response, the success equal to true, and this dot success response dot has own property. So we're going to check if it has a token property. So if success is true and it has a token property, then we do that. Else we are going to say something here which is from our API, which says invalid email or password. So we are just going to say, we're going to show an alert. This is the alert, and we have error, and we're going to say this that success response dot message, right? So the message property here in our API, when it's not successful, you have invalid email or password here. So when success is false, it shows this, or it can show this too. Okay, so now we can put that, and we get an error. Why? Because cannot invoke an expression whose type lack a call signature. Have alert service. Oh, sorry. We have to pass present alert. Alright, so now we also need to dismiss our loader. So loading dot dismiss. And now once we have actually logged the user in, and we have gotten basically the base64 encoded string of the image as well as the user token, we want to now jump straight up into facial recognition. So what we are going to do now is we are going to create a function. All right, so we're going to create a function here, but before we do that, let's dismiss our loader here, loading the dismiss. All right, and now we want to create a function. We're going to call this function facial recognition, and this facial recognition function will take two parameters. The first is going to be the token, and the second is going to be the auth image URL. So the URL that is coming from the server. So auth image URL. All right, so what we can now do here is to call that function. So this dot facial recognition, it passes two parameters, and the first is the token. So we're going to say this dot success response dot token, and the second is the auth image URL. So this dot success response dot, let's check out what we call the image URL here, and it's called image. Okay, so that's image. And now we can go straight here and start performing our facial recognition. And so to begin our facial recognition, we'll need to import the camera, or basically the Cordova camera library. So now let's do that. A plugin now, let's import from let's see, camera, ionic native camera wrapper, and /ngx, and it's gonna be camera. And we also need camera options too. Of course, we did that during registration, register page.ts. In register page.ts, you can see here we imported those two options. So camera and camera options, and we want to inject the camera here. So we are going to say public camera, and we have camera options. All right, public camera, we have camera options. So we can therefore now create a function here, and we'll call this picture options. And this picture options will pass our source type. Let me not waste my time typing this. Let's just go over to register page.ts and just search for picture options. I'll just search for picture. Yes, camera options. All right, so camera options. So let's just copy this camera options. And now let's get back to our homepage.ts and paste that in here. And we are getting a couple of errors. Why? Because we did inject camera and not type of camera options, but rather as type of camera. And yep, so now all that error should move away. Okay, so having imported our camera and written our camera options, we want to now access our camera. So we're going to say this dot camera dot get picture, and this dot get picture is going to take our options function. So what we're going to do is we're going to say let options, and this is going to be equal to this dot camera, and our source type is going to be this dot camera dot dot picture source type dot camera. All right, so basically for this we only want to give the user access to just the camera, and we don't want to give the user access to the photo library. So why are you then misbehaving? Because this function is called this dot camera options. All right, so now we can therefore pass our options, and then we can say dot then. So since this also returns a promise, we want to have an async here that passes the base64 string image data. And the reason why it's a base64 string is because we are actually using data URL. If we were maybe using something like file URL, file URL would have been the file path, or native URL would have been the native path. We're using data URL, which is base64 encoded string, just as we also did during the registration. Okay, so we're going to have an async here and an arrow function, and this is going to take, or basically what we need to pass here is actually a base64 string, which I'm going to call image data. All right, so what we can do now is to declare a variable here and call this final data, and this will be equal to let me just get into our register page.ts and copy that. So basically we are giving our base64 string a URL so that we will pass it into the image tag. The image tag can properly be able to recognize it and then display the image for us. All right, so now we can now say final data is equal to our base64 image. Okay, remember we created two, we actually binded, we did, where's the homepage.html, we binded image from server and image from camera from this object here, login image data. So what we can now do is we can now get the value of those objects and pass. So first of all, this is coming from the camera, so we're going to say this dot auth, is it image or something? No, this dot, what do we call it? This dot login image data. So login image data dot image from camera. Next up is that this is going to be equal to final data. And all right, so we have just assigned this to the value of final data. And once this is done, it is now time for us to perform facial detection on the image that the user just took. So we would need to globally call global var face API. The face API is global variable, and why is this one calling us an error? Okay, declare var, sorry. Oh my god. Global. So declare var face API. Declare, what's happening today? Alright, so declare var face API. Okay, so now declare var face API. In our homepage, the HTML, we added an element reference here. So we need to access this element reference. So I'm going to copy this element reference and come back here, and we're going to do some Angular stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to import two things, view child, and the next is going to be element reference, so we can refer that element. All right, so view child gives us access to the element on the DOM. So what we can do now is straight up here, or here, right here. Now we can say at view child, and we're going to pass two parameters. So the first one is going to be this, and then the next one, which is basically the element reference we are passing, and then the second one is going to be static or false. So now we are going to say we want to refer this, so we're going to give this an element reference of the same value, login images, element reference. All right, so now what we can do now is right here we can now say let client, or let image from app be equal to this dot login image data or login images dot native element. So we're trying to do some DOM access here, query selector, and we're going to target the ID of the image from our application here, which is image from app and image. All right, so image from app, and we will target that right now, and we just want to pass that here, image from app, and we are going to now, after targeting the image from app, we're now going to perform facial recognition on it. So first up, we need to load our model. So I'm going to go to register page because we have already done that here. But before we do that, we need to show a loading controller basically. So we're going to show a loading controller, and then we're going to load our models, and we're going to check on two different layers. First of all, we're going to check how many images are on the picture. Basically, is the user all alone taking this photo, or is he with somebody else taking this photo? If he's all alone taking this, first of all, if there's no face on the image, then we're going to tell the user no face was detected on this image. If there was more than one face, which means that the user was not alone when he took this picture, we're going to tell the user only a single face is accepted. All right, and once we are done, we want to pass this check image. We're going to pass the image element here, which is image from app. So image from app. All right, so detect all faces with face landmarks with face descriptors. Okay, so now having checked that, the next thing we want to do right now is to perform our facial recognition. So what we will do is we will declare yet another variable inside of our loading controller. So while this thing is still loading, you can see we declare loading, checking for human faces, and you can see here. Let me just get this off and get this below. Let's just zoom this in a bit. I actually forgot to do this from the beginning of this video. Okay, so here we are loading the models and we are detecting all faces. Single face, hey, only single face. Multiple faces, hey, multiple faces, we only need a single face. And what we want to do here is we want to dismiss the loader. Should we do that? No. Here's what we are going to do instead. Let's just say, we're going to say facial recognition in action. Please wait. Okay, so now once it's done performing the facial detection, the next thing we want to do is the facial recognition. And remember, we passed the base64 string to this function here, which we called auth image URL. Okay, so for auth image URL, we are going to say here, we're going to say let image from server. Okay, so we already have one here, which is image from app, and we're going to have another one here, which is the image from the server. So now let image from server be this dot login images dot native element dot query selector. All right, and query selector, we want to query image from server, and I'm going to copy that right now and just paste that in here. So we want to query image from server, but before we query image from server, we are going to say this dot login image data dot image from server, and this will be equal to auth image URL. So the auth image URL is the base64 encoded string, which is the source of this our image tag here. Sorry, image from server. Okay, so after we have successfully done this, we want to perform, basically check if the image from server, all right. I know we've actually done this before, but from the official documentation, you would have to check for both images. I know we've done this before, but we still have to check for both images. That way we can be able to get certain descriptors that we can be able to use to perform our facial recognition. And so before we do that, we would like to do something first. So we're going to call this face matcher, and this will be equal to new face API that's face matcher. And if I should not connected, so let me connect to the internet. let's just get connected. All right, now if I should go down to the official documentation, face API.js, and right in the documentation, let's just scroll down a bit, and I'm going to just look for face matcher, and yep, here we are. Now you can see it says create a face matcher which automatically assigns label from the detection results for the reference image. All right, and the reason why we are basically going to be needing this face matcher is so that we can be able to assign sort of like say label 1, label 2. And if I go a little bit further down here, you can see you can also create labeled reference descriptors. You can also create your label reference descriptors without actually using the face matcher. All right, so now let's just get back here, and we're going to use face matcher. And why we're using face matcher is so that we can be able to assign labels to our images. All right, so we are going to use face matcher, and this is going to be for our check image, basically, which is the image which we have just authenticated. And this is going to add, is that not check image? Let me see. Let me copy that and just be sure. Scroll up a bit, check image. Nope. Check image. Yep, it's check image. All right. So let's paste that in here. Now let's see what it is saying. Cannot find name check image. Cannot find name check image. And this is going to be in capital letter. Cannot find name check image. Why? If okay, this is actually outside of our loading controller, which is not supposed to be. We're actually declaring the variables based on scope. Whenever you use the let keyword in TypeScript or in ES6, it kind of like defines your variable within the scope. All right, so face API.facematcher.check check image. So what this face matcher is going to do is it's going to give our image a description, like say label 1. Now let's just log this to the console, so that when we are testing our application, we can see it. All right, and you can also go over to the documentation and just read a couple more for yourself. Things like say, give your image unique descriptions and not just the default description and all that. So now, the next thing we want to do is for the image that is coming from the server, we want to get the descriptors. And in order for us to be able to get the descriptors to perform facial recognition, we also still need to check out if there is actually an image on that one, even though we've done that before, but that's how this works. All right, so we're going to call this let's call it single result, and this would be all right an await, and we want to detect single faces. And the reason why we are detecting just a single face is because we've actually detected for multiple faces before we sent it to the server, and so there'll be no need, detecting multiple faces. That would just be prolonging our application, time and all that. So we just want to detect a single face, since we actually need to do this to be able to get our descriptors, which we're going to use to perform facial recognition. All right, so we're going to detect for a single face, and we are going to pass our image from server. So let's move up and just copy our image from server and just paste our image from server here, and then we can just get face landmarks, yes, and face descriptor, and with face descriptors. And because we are dealing with a single image, we just want the descriptor of just a single image. We're going to use descriptor, not descriptors. Let's just go back to documentation and let's type descriptor, and you are going to see that whenever we are checking for a single image and want to get the image descriptor, we use, all right, let me type something like say with this, let me do something here with descriptor. Where is with descriptor? All right, let's copy this so that I can show you actually what I mean. So now let's just get rid of that, and yep, you can see here detect single face with face landmarks with descriptor for single images, And for multiple images, detect all face-to-face landmarks with face descriptors. So, oh boy. So now let's just get back here and with face descriptor. All right. So having done that, we can just log this to the console. So console.log single result. And after that, we can now say if single result, basically if an image exists and we have been able to get the image descriptor, we can now check for the best match of this image with the previous image here, which we actually use faced API.face matcher here. So we can actually just check for the best match. So we're going to say face matcher.find best match. So avoid typographical error. Let me just come over here, copy this, and let's get over to, I know I'm going back and forth with the browser, but trust me, the way this works is really case sensitive. So if you just miss anything, you're gonna have some problems. All right, so we are just gonna paste that here. So we are saying we want to find the best match of our image with its descriptor. So we want to find, basically what I mean by the best match is the closest this face is actually, it actually uses the Euclidean distance. So we're trying to find like the okay, let me just put it in lay term, the level of accuracy. So if I just log this to the console.log best match, you're going to see the level of accuracy in which it's going to give us. And for Euclidean distance, the standard I think is 0.6, but I found out that 0.6 is not extremely accurate, so it's not as accurate as I want it to be. So we're going to say best match. All right, so if best match, if the distance is not less than, is greater than or equal to 0.4. So basically, if it is more than 0.4, we want to tell the user that this face does not match. And not just that alone, if best match dot our label, which is our descriptor, that's basically what will this best match will actually return for us. All right. Normally the best match actually returns for us an unknown. All right. So basically we're saying if best match, okay, I think I'm mixing something here up. So let me just get rid of this first and say if best match, because the standard default the standard default measurement it uses here is 0.6, and of course you understand that the lower, that's the closer it gets to 0.1, the more accurate it is. So now, and then the default standard is 0.6, and what we can just do now is we can say, and it returns a kind of like a JSON object. All right, and this JSON object usually has a property like so, like underscore label. So what we can do now is we can say if it has this property of underscore label, all right, and not just that it has this property of underscore label, the label property is also equal to unknown. So which means that that person does not look like. All right, so if it's equal to unknown, then we are going to say here, we're going to just dismiss our loader first, loading the dismiss. All right, and we are, after dismissing our loading, we're going to present an alert and say this dot alert dot present alert, and we're going to say error, this is not your face, you cannot be logged, you can't log in right now. And with that said, this basically is for the standard, is for the default standard, which is 0.6, but it's not as accurate as I want it. I actually like to go for the Euclidean distance of 0.4. So what we are going to do now is we are going to say if best match, my applications need some updates. So now if best match, right, the distance, so if the distance is greater than 0.4, or if it's greater than or equal to 0.4, then we want to tell the user once again that this is not your face. Simple. So we're going to dismiss this, and we're going to say this dot alert the present alert, and we're going to say error and error, and lastly we're going to say this is not your face. Please try again, or just whatever as an error message. But else, if all is said and done, what we can now do is we can now navigate the user to our profile page. So now let's just go to our routing module, app routing module, and we have our path as profile. So we want to import a couple of things first of all. So let's import router, ionic router from @ionic / angular. No, I think it's router, angular router or something, angular router. From angular / router. Alright, so we will need to also inject that here. So we're going to say public router is of type router, or public route, or router, just leave it that way. And now we just scroll down again to our application, and right here we want to first of all dismiss the loader. So loading.dismiss, and now we want to use the router. So this dot router dot navigate. We want to use navigate by URL instead, since we're not passing any parameter. So navigate by URL, and we are going to move to profile, if I am correct. Alright, so home, register, profile. Yes, we're going to move over to profile. Okay, so now we can save that. And what I'm going to do now is to build that. So let's just roll this up a bit and then say ionic Cordova build Android. And we are just going to wait a couple of seconds for our application to build. And while our application is building, I'm going to just take my time again to explain the whole login process. Alright, so first of all is that in our homepage.html, we created a div tag here. And the div tag has an element reference called login images. And we also created kind of like objects in which we did one with data binding to this image tag. And basically the way we did it is one is going to come from the server. One of the images is coming from the server, the 64 encoded string, and another is coming from our camera. Alright, so after doing that, what we then did was, of course, we went down straight up to our login functionality. And we popped up a loading controller that said, please wait. And while the loader is showing, we check the user's email and password. We just pass the user's email and password to our authentication service, which then sends it to our API and then gets a response, which is the data. And then we kind of store this response inside of success response. And we said if success response, the success is equal to true, and it has a property of token. That means the token is also being passed. Then we kind of dismiss the loader, and then we brought up the facial recognition function, passing the token and then passing the image. If that is not true, then we just show the error message. And any other error aside from that, we also show the error message. Alright. And after that is done, we come down to this function here which performs facial recognition. And what we do is we create a function here called camera options. And camera option passes, we pass a parameter called source type. And our application is done building. And so once I'm actually done going through this again, I'm going to test our application. Okay. So now we declared the variable here called options, and options is of type camera options. We want the quality to be 100%. We want the source type to be source type here, and set the photo album no, current orientation true. We don't want the orientation to be maybe turned upside down and stuff like that. We don't want the user to be able to edit the image. We want the image to come as a base64 string. We want it to be a picture, and we want it to be JPEG encoded type. Target height and target width should be 500 by 500 so that we can very easily process the image. All right. And now in our facial recognition function, all we just needed to do was to call this camera function and assign this to these variable options. And we needed only the camera, which is our source type. Our source type is only the camera. We don't need from the photo gallery. All right. And the reason we don't need from a photo gallery is that the user could just select, or maybe another person trying to log in for that user could just select an image of himself, of that user. And that will, that will not go well. So then we can now say this is the camera.getPicture. We pass the options, an asynchronous function, the image data, which is base64. We append this to make it a data URL that can be passed into images. And then we store the data inside our variable called image from camera. This image from camera. Remember, we created two variables here. One is called image from camera, and then the other one is called image from server. And then after that, we kind of use element reference and view chart to be able to target this div which we created here, which is login images. And the reason why we are targeting this is because we want to access this image tag and then want to also pass them both as we perform our facial detection and facial recognition. And so that's exactly what we just did here. We got the image tag. We used face matcher to be able to match these images, match the points on the images, which we are going to be using to perform our facial recognition, and not just to match the points alone also, but also to give it a description, sort of like a label. All right. And after we have done that, we then went further to the image from the server. We also needed to get descriptors for this image from the server, so we got the face landmarks and got the face descriptor. And if actually it is equal to true, everything works fine, then we now use this face matcher to find best match function, and this basically checks whether that is actually the user, and it returns for us the Euclidean distance, and by default the Euclidean distance is 0.6, and the best match always has a property of underscore label. So we can now say if best match just has one property of underscore label and the label property is not equal to unknown. Alright, so if the label property is like, let's say 1 or something, then we know, okay, yep, actually this face actually fits in. And that is determined by the Euclidean distance here, which the standard is set to 0.6. So now we can now say if best match the distance, so if basically the Euclidean distance is more than 0.4, because the closer, like I said, the closer we are, the more accurate the image is. So what we want to do is want to tell the user, hey, sorry, because I noticed 0.6 is not so accurate. Like, it's accurate, but for really identical race like that of the Asians, I'm sorry if I'm using the Asians, but you guys really look alike to me. I don't know, maybe because of where I am from. We just dismiss the loader and then we present an alert and say this is not your face, let's try again, blah blah blah. But if it actually bypasses that, then we dismiss the loader and then we send the user to the profile image. Okay, so that is that for that, and what we are going to do now is to test this on our real device. Alright guys, so our build is done, and I just want to make a couple of corrections, because I built it the first time and it was having a couple of problems, and I quickly had to fix that. So exactly what the problem was this: by passing a source attribute to this image, and then doing a one-way data binding, for some reasons I don't know why, it throws like all kinds of net something long error. So what I simply did then was I removed the source attribute here from these two image tags, and that means that we will not need this. So let me just get rid of these two. All right, and then what I went further to do was write in the tag. All I just did was, after accessing the image tag, I then added the source of the image tag to be the content of the image data coming from the camera, which is basically the 64 URL. And this is the image from app. And then the one that comes from the server, I also did the same thing too. Here, by saying image from server, after we've checked to see whether whether there are any faces or if faces are more than one, I then came further here to also add this property to it. I just came further to add the source property to it, and then made the source property to be equivalent to our auth image URL here. Alright, so that is just about that. And I also noticed one last error too, which was over the fact that if you look at the face API.detect single face, we actually passed the image from the server on our face descriptors. We passed the image from the server on our face descriptors here. So I noticed that too, and I moved it over to image from server, which is detect single face, passing the image from server. It's not supposed to be here. It's supposed to be here. Alright guys, having shown all the little changes that we need to make in our application, let's head straight to testing our application. And of course I already have my application already kind of like say installed on my mobile device. So, and of course I'm mirroring my mobile device right here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new user and call this user Bandela, or no, let's call this is a Cameron, Cameron, and then the email is Cameronera, oh sorry, not this, Cameronera at gmail.com, and then the password is password. And now let's upload an image. So let's just go to the photo gallery, and I want to take this, choose that image. All right, and it's checking for human faces on the image, and checking for human face on, and now it's done checking for human face on the image. Now we can just quickly register, and you can see new user register successfully. If we actually head over to our API and we just move down a bit here, and let me see if I can get, all right, so now let's just check, not this, so one of the first images we upload. Yep, so you can see the image I just uploaded right here. This is the image I uploaded. Okay, so we're going to perform a facial recognition. So what is going to happen now is we'll head back to our application and then go to login, and let me just refresh my database right now, and we have cameronera at gmail.com, and of course the password is always password. So I'm going to enter Cameronera, all right, Cameronera at gmail.com, and the password is password, of course. And now we just click on login, and here we are. Let me just move back a bit so that you see exactly what I'm doing. So now Cameronera at gmail.com, and now you see it pops up the camera, and now I want to take another shot of my if self of my image, alright. So now, and yep, it has taken our photo. Now when I click on this, it's going to tell you facial recognition in action, please wait. And you can see it then navigates us to the profile of our application.